Oh, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to another episode of Transcend with M. And I am extremely happy to have Mary here because Mary is such an amazing soul. She actually did the summer soiree with us not too long ago, and her story is amazing, it's powerful. She's a TEDx speaker, she is a published author, and one day she stand up and she said enough. So welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thank you, Monica. It's an honor. It's an honor to be having a conversation with you. I just love what you've done in this world. And I just love how you're such a champion for other women and women supporting women. It's just really inspired me. It was such an honor to be a part of the event. Thanks for
Thank
inviting me.
thank you. No, the honor was mine because I'm like here, like, oh my God, she's coming, right? Like it's just we are each other's fans. So that's awesome. So we're gonna dig right into it because I think you have so much to share. And I want to give you as much time as you need to, talk to us about your upbringing, your story. How did the book came about? Like you're a mom, you're a business owner. And I just want to hear the nitty gritty of like, what does Mary's life look like, right? So tell us a little bit more about you and your story.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share. So, what I would say is it's been an evolution. I am a huge fan of growth. Um, and it's been an evolution. I was born in Hong Kong, and when I was 7 years old, my family moved to Sydney, Australia, where I
Yeah.
grew up. And then as a grown up, I moved to the United States.
Mhm.
Initially, I was the career trajectory that I was on was my major was computing science. So my undergrad was actually computing science. This I really like the analogy of the butterfly.
Yeah.
So I feel my unique calling and then going into that, and marinating into that and discovering and uncovering what that is like layers. So the image that I like to use is both a butterfly as well as a lotus flower. So you know how the lotus flower opens up and then there's more layers, more layers, more layers. I feel that's how we are as women, as
Mhm.
people really, but I know your audience is many of them are women, so I want to speak specifically to that. And it's been a journey, as each decade I look back and reflect and see how much transformations happened. And I love doing that with my clients. What I do now today, maybe I should start there, is I'm a transformational public speaker, trainer, and coach. And I've had my business for many years. But once upon a time, I was a computer programmer. So,
Mhm.
that trajectory has shifted as I've shifted, as I've changed. And what I love about what I do is I love helping other women connect with their own stories. A lot of my clients have their own businesses, for example. And so, what I help them do is I help them speak about what it is that they do, but in a way that represents their uniqueness, right? So, not just here's what I do, but who are you? I love hearing people's stories. At the beginning of before we went live, I even said to you, I just want to know more about you, because I'm so curious
Yeah.
to find out more about you. And so, therefore, using that curiosity to help them uncover and discover who they are at the core and then build it back up. Why do you do what you do? And how does that connect to your passion, your
Yeah.
soul, your heart? It was interesting right at the beginning of this interview. I don't know if you noticed it yourself, but when you were introducing me, you had your hands on your heart like this, and that
Yeah.
was just so unconscious. I felt, but that's just totally who you are. You're heart centered, and that's really what I want. Like this trajectory and this journey that I've been through, come to recognize that I'm a teacher at heart. I just
Mhm.
love to share the wisdoms that I've collected over the years through my own trials and tribulations to come
Yeah.
to these, conclusions. And then how do I then impart that and have those wisdoms benefit other women who are walking the same path, maybe
Yeah.
younger or a different path, and how do I help them follow their heart and be able to um, recognize that they are more than their conditioning. There's a lot to unpack there, but
I know.
let me pause because I can talk a lot, but let me pause right there. Let you digest.
You're too funny. You're too funny. No, you will be surprised. Like this is your time. I know, I get a lot of feedback saying, I don't want to talk anymore. And I was like, well, it's just your story. I can't tell it for you, like it doesn't work that way. But I think, let's unpack this in a couple different ways. So tell me about, let's take it back for a second, but like tell me about growing up in Australia and then why move here?
Yeah. So there's a number of layers there.
Mm-hmm.
I think growing up, all of us, not just me, we are so many of us are so influenced by our parents and what their philosophy is, right? So growing up, I did the thing that I'm my family's Chinese, and therefore I grew up, with that. My parents were hard workers. They had full-time jobs. There was me and my siblings, so we didn't get a lot of quality parents time because, looking back, my parents were very much involved in um, the functionality of the family, right? And so they were very functional in their relationship with us. And growing up that traditional path of going to school, graduating, going to college, and getting a job. And so that's what I did, and that's what I liked and excelled at to some degree. But it wasn't until after college and having graduated and doing the traditional path that I started to notice that I had other interests that were calling to me. So in
Yeah.
other words, my curiosity, right? So for example, one area of my life that I really suffered from was being really self-conscious. Like out of college, I was very, very self-conscious. Here I am in my early 20s, and these, grown-ups. I'm now working with a bunch of grown-ups, and what do I have in common with them? And how do I even
Yeah.
speak to them at that level? And now I have those social skills that I've developed over the years, and because of what I do, I can speak to people, and that this is what I do now. But back then I didn't have any of those skills.
Mhm.
So therefore I became really self-conscious and I'd be in a conference room, with all these quote unquote grown-ups and feeling like, oh, I don't belong here. I don't have the same experience they do. I was in IT at the time. So they would be talking about, this system, that system in so much detail. And I would be sitting there not knowing what they're even talking about and being too scared to ask because who am I to ask? I don't even know what to ask, right? So
Right.
there was that gap. There was a huge gap of um, feeling like I didn't belong there. And so therefore, as a result of that, not having the confidence to speak up,
Yeah.
in those conference rooms, in those business. I remember just dreading, like anytime we had any kind of team meeting, group meeting, any kind of meeting, how it is in the corporate world, meeting after meeting. I hated it. I would dread it because I was just not wanting to be asked a question because maybe I didn't know the answer, right? So there was that huge weight on my shoulders to feel like I ought to be, very confident and know what I'm talking about, when in reality at that time I didn't. And so therefore I was out of sheer um, desire to not want to feel bad about myself. That's when I started to work on my speaking skills.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then it wasn't until, and then, wanting to travel overseas for adventure. And finding a job in what I loved. At the time, after a couple of years of college, I ended up working for an airline. It was an airline called Qantas. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's an Australian airline.
No.
And so as a staff, I got to travel, all over the world. And I took advantage of that. And when I landed in New York, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, it felt like I had a past life here. You know how when you go to a place and it feels like this, I've been
Deja vu.
here.
It was deja vu.
Like the energy of it really resonated with me. And I was like, oh, I really need to be here. And literally, I remember sitting back then too, it was in the early 2000s. Not everybody, I certainly didn't have my own laptop. I just remember remember how they had those internet cafes?
Yeah.
You would go there and you would rent the internet cafe for a couple of hours, and I would literally sit there, sending my resumes, and then found a job within the 2 weeks I was on vacation. And then it took a couple of months for the visa. I didn't even have a green card or even a visa to work in the United States. But the company that hired me sponsored me to come here,
That's
and that's
amazing.
how I ended up in the United States. And
That's
then
awesome.
thank you. And then from there, I continued to pursue, learning how to speak and being even more confident in the way I show up, and then discovered there was this whole world, like this whole skill set around speaking that I didn't even know existed. I thought people just spoke well. They were born that way, but I didn't realize it's a skill that you can learn, just like, playing a musical instrument. There's specifics that you can learn. And so I started learning with the best in the world, literally the best in the world, like these mentors that I started learning with. I stalked them. I was like following them around the country. Anytime they had workshops, they had mentorship programs, I would literally, fly around the country, learning from them, absorbing. I was like a sponge. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that they're teaching me this stuff, so I was just like a sponge absorbing it all.
That's
And then,
amazing.
applying it to the point where I shifted careers, because I said to myself, well, there's a model. Here I am, a computer programmer, in front of the screen all day long. And there's nowhere to apply these skills as much. So I shifted to force myself to be in front of people, like a pivot, almost like 1 foot here and then 1 foot outside of the circle. So what did I know? I knew software and what's on the other side of the circle. 1 foot still in software, but now transitioning into software training. So training people on software, that requires me to speak in front of people and
Yeah.
for me to articulate the skills and apply the skills that I've learned. And I ended up liking it. I wasn't that good at it. In fact, the first evaluation I ever got was like, she sounds like a robot. Like, it was bad.
My name is
And I was
Mary.
like, process, and I knew, just like any other skill, if I loved it, and I kept doing it and kept tweaking it, I would get better at it. And what I discovered, Monica, was what I enjoyed about it was when what I was teaching to the person, when their eyes lit up and they understood it, when they went from, oh my God, this is confusing, to now I know how to use it. That's what drove me. I was like, those aha moments. I felt like I was born to be a midwife of knowledge, or with
Yeah.
midwife of wisdom. I loved it when they went from confused to aha. That was what was the catalyst for me to continue this path. So I
Yeah.
wanted to learn to even get better and better at explaining things. And I loved learning complicated stuff and making the complex stuff too simple so that people could understand it in a way that might be even entertaining, right? Like I love to use the term edutainment. So taking the education and the entertainment and then melding it so that people feel like they enjoy learning. That's what I love doing. And then so from there, another pivot from software training to speaking training, communications training, leadership training. So it was kind of like, if you think of circles, 1 foot in here, 1 foot in the new circle. Once I got a footing in this, switched again, 1 foot here and 1 foot in a new circle. And that way I'm still growing, because that's, if I'm not growing, I'm bored and I will be unmotivated. But
Mhm.
then bringing that back and helping others to learn what I just learned is really what makes my heart sing, makes my soul sing. And so
Mhm.
that's a very long answer to your question.
I love it because it gave us a lot of insight of like how did you evolve, right, through this
Right.
journey, and it's amazing. So
Thank you.
you are now a mom, you are a published author, you are a TEDx speaker. What was that journey like? Like, I mean, it is one thing to wanting to learn how to speak and get really good at speaking, but from there to the execution that you have done today, what was that like? Like, how did you pivot into that?
Yeah. Um, Great question. I would love to say, well, I had this plan and then I executed this wonderful plan. But really, in reality, it didn't work like that. It was, I just know what my heart wants, and let me fall down, figure it out, learn from the people who are ahead of me. So similarly, like I feel like, and maybe you can resonate with this, I always think the best teachers are the best students. So it's like the figure eight. If you can teach and learn, so I want to learn from the people who are the best students because they keep growing. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I learned from, I found mentors who are ahead of me in the game of business, and invested in myself, because, the best people aren't free. The best people want you to have skin in the game. And so, therefore, investing, um, and just elevating my possibilities of, like, if you told me 5, 10 years ago, even, that I'd be doing what I'm doing, and to the degree that I'm doing it at, I wouldn't believe you. It's like one step, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. Being willing to invest in myself. That's what I would say to your listeners. Be willing to invest in yourself, both in time and with money, to
Yeah.
because you are. My belief is that we are our best assets. So
Mm-hmm.
if we are growing ourselves, we have more to contribute and more value to give. And then to step in claiming that confidence. Like, I think with women too, I work with a lot of women. One of the common things that I see with them,
Sorry.
especially, is they have so much to give. Like, I feel when I look at people, I see what's possible for them. Perhaps this is the gift you talked about, your superpower of bringing people together, right? And I totally agree. That's just your superpower. I feel like my superpower is I look at someone and I can see what they're capable of, and I can see what that next version of them looks like.
Mm.
Um, and I love helping them uncover it if they're willing, and then to step into that and claim it. Because there's one thing to have potential, right? Potential is latent. It's another thing to step into it, to claim it, and then take the action in order to manifest that potential into physical reality, right? There's a process. And I,
Yeah.
I like to say to people, anything you see, this pen, or this book, or this phone, anything that you can see, this program, it once began as a spark in someone's eye, right?
Yeah.
There's a process that they go through in order for this pen to be manifested, right? And it's the same with everything. And that's really what I want your listeners to hear is
Yeah.
that's just a discovery journey. At some point, I had that aha moment, and it happens multiple times. It's like, oh my God, like, oh, I want a business, and now I've created one. I wanted to create this program, and now it's here. So,
Yeah.
it's that is a mindset shift from how I was brought up to, live in the company and do this. This is your prescribed path. You follow the path. Um, but unbeknownst to me, that was one of the discovery points in walking this journey, coming to recognize and to not just to think, but to know based on my own direct experience that you can create whatever you want,
Mhm.
so long as your heart's in it and that you are willing to take the action. You're willing to suffer some pain along the way, right? Because it's like you end up confronting your own fears. If you're
Yeah.
growing, if you're stretching, you're going to get to that edge of your comfort zone, and it's not going to feel like woohoo. It's going to feel like, oh my god, what have I done,
A
right?
100%. A
And so
hundred
that
percent.
fear and the willingness to sit through that fire of the pain, of the fear, of the uncertainty, I feel that that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why many people shrink back, and including myself at one point in my past, not to do that, right? So that I would say that that's part of the learning journey.
How about the fear of rejection? And how did you came to understand your superpower?
Um, I would love to say I am immune to rejection. That would not be true at all. Um, I would say the way I've come to, just because working with so many people, and I love to reflect on my own experience. I always say to people when I'm teaching, don't believe me. It sounds so weird, like don't believe me, don't believe anything I say. In fact, I don't want you to believe in anything I say. I want you to test it out for yourself, try it on, test it out for yourself, and then allow your own direct experience to be the authority of your decisions. That's what I always say, because I can only share from my direct experience.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered is, in working with so many people, and like I said, reflecting on myself, coming to find out that it's not one person. It's not like, here's Mary, and Mary is Mary is Mary. No, it's like there's parts within one person, right? There are parts of me that are like frightened and scared, and don't want to show up, and there are parts of me that are like, no, we're doing this. No,
Yeah.
this is what we've discovered. This is what your heart wants. This is what your soul wants. This is your purpose. And then there are parts that are like, no way, the split personality, so to speak, right? So
Yeah.
it's really about cultivating that internal relationship with those different elements within yourself. And then, as consistently as you can, make decisions from the parts that are the highest parts, right? As consistently as possible, because it doesn't always win. Sometimes the lazy part, or scared part
Yeah.
wins. And then also not to make those wrong, because you're a human being, and learning to cultivate a nurturing relationship with those parts. This is why I love talking, like my book, as you know, it's all about the inner critic, right? Like
Yeah.
learning, oh, what is my inner critic saying to me, and then cultivating that intimate relationship with it, so that you become real. You become real. It's like, oh man, right now I'm really scared, like, and be real with that, and not have to hide it and be like. So getting back to your question, I hate rejection. Don't like it. I take it personally. I go, why can't this person see the value in this? And then go through all of those parts within myself. I
All
had
the
this one person,
emotions.
for example, I had this one person sign up for one of my workshops, and then they came back and said, "Oh, changed my mind,"
Mm.
and specifically, it was because on that particular day, you said something to me this way, and it
Yeah.
didn't jive with me, and then, I was like, that's fine, because I don't want people to come work with me if they don't want to work with me, right? So that's fine. You don't have to work with me. But then afterwards, I went through this, I went through, like, what is he talking about? Like, I was like really
Yeah.
mad about it. But then, like, those parts were there. And I'm like, okay, so let that have the expression. And then choosing, moving forward, like, what can I learn from this? What
Mm-hmm.
parts did he say that resonated with me that I can take as feedback and work on it? Or should I just reject that feedback and it doesn't resonate with me? And
Mm-hmm.
it depends on the moment. I think everyone is my teacher. Like, whether there's someone who's like, I love and adore, or someone who's like, get out of my world, like, they are also my teacher, right? So
Yeah.
it's like different people activate different parts of you, And so, and I don't like it. I'm a very sensitive person. It took me many years to be able to recognize that, let alone say it out loud. Like, yeah, I'm sensitive. I cry. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm inspired. I cry when I'm pissed off. I cry. Oop, am I allowed to say that?
No,
I cry
you're
all
fine.
the time. And
I love it.
I used to really like um, not like that about myself, because it's like, oh, that's so weak. Um, but then come to recognize, no, that's my truth in the moment. And, this is me. This is who I am. Like it or take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But, I'm a human being. That's really the answer to that.
So how is that? Because it's one thing learning it, right? How how is it from a teaching standpoint, right? Like how do you teach people to be able to believe that this is possible? Because there is one thing is that we are very reluctant to open all these door of feelings, all these door of things that we don't want to recognize because of the fear of society, right? Because we live in such a judgmental society. So how do you get people engaged into actually performing these, little steps, or how do you get them to perform at this level? What did it took you to perform at that level?
Um, so to answer your first question, the person, and I learned this the hard way too.
Mhm.
Um, Firstly, the person has to want it for
Mhm.
themselves, right? They have to have a desire for it. Uh, and they have to be ready, because the desire might be there, but they may not be ready. So the timing might not be there yet. Um, and so, but once it's there, once they want it and they see it, and they want to, they know they want to pursue something bigger for themselves,
Yeah.
and they're ready, then let's go. Let's go. I'm going to show up 1000%. You got to show up 1000%. And then you might be scared. That's okay. Um, let's be scared together, right? One foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. There's a whole set of tools that I can share with the person, depending on what it is they're challenged by. Most of the time, it's usually half and half, but a lot of the time it's their own getting in their own way, right? Their own thinking getting in their own way. And so supporting them through that, that's one element. And then there's the mechanics. So the way I see communications and speaking, there's the internal components of how you relate to yourself, and how your inner critic is running the show or not, who's driving it at any given moment. Are you overtaken by your negative thoughts? There is that component. And then over here there's the mechanics component. So how is it that you structure what you say? How is it that you know which storage to use? Is it engaging what you're saying? Is there interaction? There's a whole assortment of various nuances that I could take them through, and it depends on the challenge, right?
Yeah.
um, to answer your second question, for me it's an innate drive to just want to grow and to become the best version of myself.
Mhm.
Um, and the most recently, the lesson has been, how sometimes you think you learned a lesson, and
Ah,
then you get hit by another situation. You're like, oh man, I thought I learned this lesson already. Damn it. So most recently,
I
most
was
recently,
there, thought I learned that.
right, right. So for me right now, the lesson, the most recently, like I said, it's that fine line between
Mhm.
within. You got to look within, because no one can tell you your truth. Only you can, be real with yourself. For me, it's like that dance between the healthy ego and my heart, and
Hmm.
the healthy ego, and then the dysfunctional ego. When the ego becomes too big for, like too big for itself, that becomes dysfunctional ego, and that always comes back to bite me, right? So I always got to remind myself, I got to have the heart of service in the forefront, driving the car, and then to keep reminding myself the humility, like including that humility within myself. The times I struggled, the time I still struggle now as I grow,
Yeah.
and then to remember that so that I have the empathy to hold a safe space for the people that I'm helping that are struggling through whatever it is that they're struggling through.
Hmm.
So it's a continuous learning process, and it's not an out there thing; it's an in here thing. It's an
Yeah.
in here thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. So, how do you manage with home life, speaker life, author life? How do you manage? I think everybody is like, the question we get the most is like, how are you able to do all of this? Right?
Yeah.
So, what is your
Um,
recipe?
yeah. I mean, I feel like it's definitely not a. It's not like I got this all down. It's more of let's see if we can achieve some kind of middle ground.
Mm,
um for example, like right now I'm speaking to you and it's like 7:30 and my husband's in the other room with my child, doing the homework.
right.
And mom guilt. Like some of my clients will say, "Oh, I have mom guilt. How do I get over mom guilt?" And I said, "I can't help you because I have mom guilt all the time. Like I, I just do. It's like
Yeah.
I love my business, and I feel like I'm definitely passionate about what I do and helping others, and scaling it so I can help more people. I'm so passionate about that. Sometimes I have to snap myself out of it and go, "Oh, now it's mummy time." And it's not easy, especially when my child's 8 now, but earlier on in those first couple of years, it was really difficult. I find my business is easier to do than being a mom because
Mhm.
I'm constantly aware that like my shortcomings as a mom, because I'm like, I feel guilty. But, so I mean, I would love to hear your version of it because I haven't gotten that version down yet.
Oh, me neither at all. At all. Like it's like you said, it's 7:30 and we are here and I get home late every day. Like I am not home during the week with my husband or my kid. But that's my choice, right? And even though I try to like make certain things happen, sometimes there are just days that you cannot control your full day and that it's going to happen too. But the guilt is it's there and sometimes it takes over, right? Like sometimes you're like, I am sorry, but today I'm gonna stay home. And then you are okay for another month or so. So that's kind of like how I deal with it. Like for example, on when was it? I think it was Sunday. My daughter was like, "Mom, we haven't done anything together. You're working a lot." And she's coming to an age where like it's soon enough she's not gonna want to spend any more time with me because she's becoming a teenager and all these things. And I told her, "So what do you want to do?" And she's like, "Oh, my friends and I planned." So she had a whole plan already that I was going to take them into a place called Boundless Adventures. And we were just going to spend a couple hours there doing it's courses, but it's on the trees. And, you
Ropes
know,
courses.
it's how you call them? The zip linings and all.
Mm,
I am bruised up, like my whole body is. But, it was my choice to make sure that I spend quality time with her,
yes.
even though during the week I couldn't, right? So
Yeah.
I think everybody's different and
Mm,
everybody, but at the end of the day, they also understand that everything that you're doing is for them and that everything that you go through is in sacrifice to them. Because what I explained to my daughter is like, as much as hurts you, it hurts me too, because we're not spending that time together. But at the same time, it exists a little bit of a level of respect and understanding from both sides because I'm telling her the truth and she knows and she sees how hard my mom is working to give me the life that I don't see other kids in my class or other of my friends having.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that brings a little bit of satisfaction because at least you're doing something right. So
Mm,
that's kind
mm,
of like
mm,
my way of dealing with that.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really I love what you shared about that not everyone can relate to that, because I feel like with having your own business, I mean, there are other aspects that pull people away from the family. One thing
Yeah,
I will say also, I want to add to this is they see when I was, for example, I wrote the book when my son was about 2, I think, or one and a
yeah,
half, about 2. And one day he comes, he sees me, working there, writing the book all the time. And one day he sat on my desk and with my laptop, and he was like pretending to type, and the computer wasn't even on. He was just pretending to type. And I was like, "What are you doing, honey?" And he goes, "I'm writing my book. I'm
yeah,
writing my book." So he's like, I was like, "Oh, so that's sunk in that mommy wrote a book." Like, so it's little bits like that make me feel like those sacrifices are worth it.
yeah,
But also, I think the other thing that you mentioned that resonated with me was making sure you set the quality time, like
yeah,
Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning, not every, but sometimes I run events, but most Saturday mornings, I carve out that couple of hours, like 3 or 4 hours, to have that quality time with my son. Karate, like mental health is also a very important component, like how I proactively deal with my mental health
hmm,
is I love martial arts and I do karate, and that just brings me back to the present moment, and I just love it. Not always, because sometimes it feels like, oh, I don't really want to go. It's such a discipline because doing it like 3 times a week, but
yeah,
it also centers me. So managing that proactively also helps me be better in those other arenas, like even at work and at home. It balances me out. So quality time with yourself, in other words, is also important, I think.
yeah. I think that's important too. I'm grateful that my family does give me that time if I need to. Like, but I don't take it as often as I should. But I love that you do karate. My daughter does taekwondo.
Oh, cool.
What I love to do is eat. I just love to eat. You just drop me in a restaurant for an entire day and I'm good. Like I just come back home feeling fatter but happier. It's totally fine. Like I just everybody has their ways, right? Like or a
Mm.
hike. I love hiking. Or even though I sometimes feel like I cannot walk more than a mile. Because I'm sedentary most of the time. I'm like in a desk and a computer. But anything that is outdoors, I just love. And food. I
Mm.
am just I've been with food. I have a relationship with food that it's kind of like, I don't know, weird, but food makes me so happy. Even if I'm home and I'm like, stressed out about something, you show up with a plate of food, and I was like, oh my god, you just made my entire day. So
Yeah, yeah. I
it's
think a lot of people will be able to relate to you on that one.
yeah, it's like just give me the food, put me a Netflix show that has at least 12 episodes, and I'm good.
Yeah, no, you
You
need
know?
that. Like sometimes you just need that. Like I'm so excited about on September 9th. I don't know if you're familiar with Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is a Netflix series. Yeah, season
Yeah.
5 coming out, and I'm like, it's on my calendar. I forgot, the binge watching coming out. That's important too.
My daughter is a black belt for Taekwondo, and she's been doing Taekwondo since she's 4.
Wow.
And the dojo that she's part of, it's very family oriented and it's very strict. And she's on demo team and she's in the leadership. And when Cobra Kai came out, was only the kids that had to watch it. The parents had to binge in too. So I waited for like the whole 2 seasons. I watched it like boom all together
Yeah,
because
so
then you go to the dojo and everybody's talking about it and you're like don't talk to me about it. I haven't finished it yet. So it is really cool because it creates the community and is part of all of that. So
Yeah, no, it's
I,
wonderful. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that your daughter's doing that because I mean, as an adult,
yeah,
I wish I had that opportunity as a child. My son also started karate when he was 3.5.
yeah,
Um, but I would highly recommend it to children, to women, especially women. There's nothing that builds your physical confidence
yeah.
the way that training in the martial arts can do. I'm sure there's other things that you can do, but
I took
for me, it's that's the
classes, but
passion.
I took couple classes. I just wasn't really good at following directions. So I'm not like I cannot bake and I can't follow directions. So and the whole, since I've known people for a long time, the whole addressing, like the addressing of the people is very different within the dojo than it is outside, and it carries out outside too. And then the whole forms, I just couldn't. I'm not coordinated at all whatsoever. I learned that about myself on a Mother's Day class.
Thanks for
So
being honest.
I admire my daughter because she's so disciplined, and she's a junior black belt, and she's working really hard now to like get to the next level and get her stripes and get all these stuff. And I was like, I don't know how you do it. I was like, I tell her all the time. And then not only that, but you need to learn the language. They also make you learn the language. They also make you like take tests in Korean and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't
Yeah.
know how she can do this because I don't study her at all about
Yeah.
any of that. I
Yeah, I
just,
think it's a natural curiosity, right?
yeah, I just show up as a parent and I was like, yeah, my daughter. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that, to hear about
yeah.
that. The other aspect of martial arts that I love too is not just the physical, it's the philosophy. There's a
Mhm.
Zen philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
And it applies to life. Like so many there's I heard that the one time someone told me, and I loved it, is the dojo is a microcosm of the macrocosm, how you are in here and the fears you face. It's not easy, like being punched in the face. It's not a pleasant thing. But then
No.
how do you manage that? And then how do you apply that outside of the dojo? Those are
Yeah.
the elements that I love, but yeah, so much to talk about. Look at that.
I know, right? So let's just reel it back. So we like martial arts. Everybody knows that now. So let's reel it back in. So tell me a little bit more about, so on the soiree, you shared that there was this specific scenario where you just were asked something and you were in a conference room and something happened, and I want you to tell that story because I think it could resonate with a lot of women that think that their opinion is not important, or that
Mm,
they feel that they have a say or that they have something to share that matters. So wondering if you can share that story with us, for women out there, because I think it links very well to your book and how showing authentically and becoming in tune with what you really are can take you to the next level, the next step.
yeah. So I think the story you're referring to is when sitting in the conference room and I just remembered people talking about what it is that they're talking about, and then the internal voice within myself
Mhm.
saying to myself, I don't care about this. I don't care about the barcode on the computer and the inventory. I don't care. And
Yeah.
it just kept repeating over and over again in my head, until finally I took notice of it and said, hey, wait a minute. I think it's trying to tell me something, that this is not what I care about anymore. So
Mhm.
following that, And then being able to admit to myself, to speak it out loud to myself and shift the trajectory, I think is very important, to be real with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that there in whatever it is that you choose as your path, if you feel inadequate, like I did at the beginning of every pivot, it's natural to be scared. In fact, I would recommend for everybody, I did this recently, was to map back your own history and to see those times where you accomplish something, and to look at the nuances of your journey in that trajectory. And there was a time, and what I noticed when I saw all these arcs within my own history, oh, look at that. I was scared at that point. Oh, look at that. I found help in developing the skill. And oh, look at that. I accomplished a goal. So seeing that same arc over and over again, and then being able to project out into the future to say, oh, so this thing that I'm scared of right now, like right now, for example, I'm rebranding my company and I'm scaling it to the next level so I can help more people. Um,
Nice.
and oh, I'm scared. I've never done this before. It's outside my comfort zone, and to give me the comfort to go look at all of these past arcs of your history and look at that you're at that arc again, allows me to have confidence in that it's another uh, phase one, phase two, phase three, within myself of moving through that fear, finding someone to help me, and then, learning from people, and being able to then achieve what it is that I want.
Yeah.
um, I think is an important exercise, and I would recommend that to everybody. And if you really, really, really don't want to look at your own path, you can look at the paths of other people, like Monica, like these people on the podcast that you speak to all the time, and
Yeah.
see, that in fact, we're all more similar than we are different, and
Mm-hmm.
that you can draw inspiration from that. And that you're not alone. You're never alone. That's a lie. That you're alone. That's a lie. You can reach out and you can connect. Um, and even though in that moment it might feel so real to you that you are alone and no one can help you, there's tools that you can use, which I talk all about in my book. There are many, many tools that I've discovered along the way that work for me. And this is why I'm so passionate about helping people, because people don't realize there are tools, there's a skills and mindset you can learn. And um, that's probably the story that you were referring to.
I
The
love
whole
it. I love it. Yes, no, and I think, sometimes we're so afraid of like going for what we really want to be involved in, right? Sometimes we sit miserably at places that we do not belong. We sometimes sit miserably at tables that we are not welcome. We sometimes put ourselves into situations that we really know we don't need to be there, but we do it just because we don't know how to take the next step, or we're not confident on taking the next step. And I think, it is extremely important that we learn how to come to terms with those things, and that it is always an okay moment to start over. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You hear I hear this term a lot, which is
Mhm.
reinvention, like reinventing yourself, reinventing. And there's some nectar in that term, because um, y- I feel like if here's what I'll say about that: always challenge that voice within yourself. Always challenge it. Like if you say, oh, I'm not feeling confident about this, it's okay to not feel confident, because it's not a bad thing. It's just whatever the limitation is that you feel,
Mhm.
that you have, challenge that. Is this true? Is this absolutely 1000% true?
Mhm.
And what I've noticed, because I work with a lot of people, and my own experience is, we generally have a tendency to argue for our limitations. Yes, it's true, because,
Yeah.
because, right? And so I feel like it's important, almost like a debate. It's important to answer back to that voice that says it's true because this, that, and the other. Well, what if it was possible? What would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
What would it, if there was one step towards what's possible, what would that look like? Play with the imagination. That's important
Yeah.
because I heard on the podcast recently, I forget who it was, the guest, what was the worst piece of advice you ever got? And his answer was be realistic. That was like the worst piece of
Ah,
advice.
interesting.
Because realistic means like limitation, right? It's already here. I can only work within this box.
But you know what? I never heard that before. So I'm super curious. Now you're going to make me research. Because I always say be realistic with yourself. Like, like it's okay to dream, but be realistic with yourself and your capabilities and what you are. So that's interesting. I need you to send me that. Can you send me that? Because
Yeah,
I
I will. Yeah,
really want
remind
to
me if I
try.
forget. But for sure, there's so I got to tell you. So let me just share since we're at my desk. So I have this reminder every day, wisdom,
Yeah.
and I'm a collector. You know how some people collect stamps and some people collect this, that, and the other coins. Here's what I collect. I collect wisdoms. So this is Wisdoms Volume 17.
Whoa.
So
Okay.
I am an avid collector of wisdoms. Like when I watch podcasts, when I'm watching YouTube clips, when I'm reading a book, whatever resonates with me, I write them down in big format. So when I'm wanting inspiration, I will just look at it and I'll be like, wow, that's so true, and get myself out of the slump that I'm in. And then I share from it. Whatever I learn, I'm sharing with my students, with my clients. I'm sharing intuitively what is it that they may need to hear.
Yeah.
But it's just I got to stop there because it's like this conversation clearly, Monica, can go on forever and
Oh,
ever.
I know. It's okay. I mean, I'm not in a rush, but I know we got to eat dinner, so it's all right. But maybe, just maybe, we're going to say it here. So next year, I'm going to be putting up a series of workshops, right? And basically, people like you will come in and do a workshop for people that want to hear about all these things, right? That not everybody's comfortable talking about. And I think it is
Yeah.
necessary for us to have a platform where, we are non-judgmentally talking about these things, because I have no fear on recognizing that I'm so ignorant to so many things that other women that I talk to on a daily basis believe, right? And that they think it's real, and other things that, the differences of is what makes us human, right? Is what makes us a really good and powerful unit, is that we can recognize and can respect the difference of opinions and basically learn from one another, but recognizing that sometimes we don't really know, and that we really need to hear from others about certain things, and getting out of that comfort zone. I want to put those type of conversations out there. And I think, these dynamic is just so amazing because it doesn't exist out there, right? And I think, yes, we can get going for hours because we have difference on opinions, and we are ignorant to a lot of different things, and at the same time we're super knowledgeable in certain other aspects that we can bring that value, and that's what makes us amazing, right? Like, it's just
Yeah.
wonderful how
Mm,
that synergy can be created. So I love
yeah.
it. I love it. I
Yeah.
can.
I love it too. So I want to end on this, which is what I want to hear the vision, like the imagination of what your vision is. Like my vision, as an example, is, and it took me a lot of inner work to discover this. My vision is I want to see a sincere heart of service, women and
Mhm.
men, but specifically women, to be more leading in this world. Like, what would the world look like if it was led by heart centered women who
Mhm.
care about each other, who look after each other, and who are full of empathy?
Yeah.
versus ego, right? We all
Right.
have ego. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but wouldn't you want to see a world that's run by people who are caring about each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And therefore claim that and not, play a bigger game. That's I think that would be a message that I would want to put out there is like step
Yeah.
into that and what would that bigger game look like for you and play
Yeah.
that.
I learned a couple years ago, I was one of these leaders that believe on kind of like dictatorship a little bit. And then I was hit in the face with like, not working, right? And it was such an extreme transformation because I am right now, for many years now, a servant leader. And I do believe in kindness. And I do believe that you putting yourself here instead of here, regardless of what that pay difference is or what title is, it makes the entire difference in the world because when you have a humble heart and you actually are leading by example and that you can just be a person instead of a figure, right? Or instead of an authority, which
Mm,
you're still going to gain respect without enforcing that type of personality. It makes the entire difference in the world. And I
mm,
think, at least for me, it has. I don't know
mm,
works for others because not everybody has that personality, right? And not everybody believes in it. But I do believe that, if we were just a little bit more caring and a little bit more understanding, it's not that people is going to take advantage of you because you can still put your foot down and set that boundaries in that respect. But I do think that where we fail is enforcing the power, and I think there is a lot to unfold on that. But I
yeah,
do believe that
yeah,
um, I would like to see a world where that doesn't really exist.
yeah. um and I feel there's another component too, which is um and then to reflect that back to ourselves, um to be kind to yourself. So hard to do, so hard to do.
Yeah, agree.
Mm.
Agree. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for
We'll
having
definitely have like part two, part three, part four.
me.
Every quarter, we're going to do this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yes, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Such an honor, and I so enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And I really appreciate you being here. I mean, we're super close, so we can definitely, keep talking, lunching, having a glass of wine. Maybe you can teach me a couple moves. Who knows? But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you for taking the time, for saying yes, for showing up, which not everybody does, and for just being an example and a powerhouse and leading humbly and
Mm.
with a lot of heart. So thank you so much, and I will see you soon.
See you, Monica. Bye. Thank you so much.
Take care, my friend.
Mwah.